All right, we're going to walk through exercise 4-2 of Murach's Visual Basic 2015. I've already downloaded the starter files, extracted them for my class. I put them in my last name, exercise 4-2, and I'm going to open the solution. Okay. So this is what we're starting with, and we need it to look like figure 4-21. So in the book, 4-21 is on page 147, and we need to add a lot more fields. And we're going to add some one more button as well. So let's make this form bigger, give me some space to work. We have, this is going to say, my properties here. This now says enter subtotal. Below it we have subtotal. Interesting. All right, I'm going to undo that. Let's just move all this stuff down. I'm going to take these, copy paste, put them right there. Okay, this one is going to say enter subtotal. Notice I put an access key on the S. So this one, I'm going to remove that access key off the S. And this text box is now, it's read only. And when we set read only, we want to set the tab stop to false, so we're not going anywhere. Let's make sure that this tab stop or index on enter subtotal is 0, so that the tab index here could be 1. Okay, so we have enter subtotal. Then I'm going to take these buttons and move them out of the way. We'll get to those later. Subtotal discount percent, discount amount total. All right, so that stuff stayed the same. And then we need 3 more boxes over here that say number of invoices, total of invoices, invoice average. I'm going to very carefully copy these. Actually, I'll grab that one. Okay. Copy paste. And then I'm going to try to get them to line up here. I think that looks good. Let's see, is that lined up? That looks pretty good. All right. So this is not subtotal. This now says number of invoices. And there's other ways you could have done this. You could have, gone to your common in your toolbox and you could have taken labels. Where's my label? And dragged labels over and created all this yourself. But because these were already here, I just wanted to do a quick copy paste. Trying to be as efficient as possible. So this one we're calling total of invoices. This one is called invoice average. All right, I want to move these over just a hair, give myself a little bit more room, and then take this whole thing and move it over just a little. Okay, now we have calculate, exit. We're going to add another button here. So I'm going to take calculate, copy, paste. And in between this, I'm going to make a clear button. So these are my new buttons. I'll line them up there. That looks fantastic. I'm going to select all this, shove it up into the corner. Looks good. Take my form, resize it. Great. So now I just did step 2. So we enlarged the form, added new controls that are shown in 421, set the properties for each of the controls. So I don't care too much about the labels. I do care about the text boxes. So I'm going to name this txt number of invoices. I'm going to call this one txt total of invoices. This one here is txt invoice average. And this one here is txt. Now we already have subtotal, so I'm going to say enter subtotal. All right, and just checking these, those are all named properly. Oh, and then we added this clear button, so let's make sure that this is btn clear. Make sure that that's named properly. All right, that was step 3. Step 4, enter the code editor. And I need to enter 3 module level variables. The 3 shown in figure 421. So remember, we're talking about the scope of the variable. Module level means that any of the subprocedures or functions can access them if they are put outside of the subprocedure. So we have the subprocedure that handles button calculate click, which is inside form invoice total. I'm going to add my variables here. So number of invoices, it's a counter, so it's an integer. And then we have total of invoices. And because an invoice is a decimal value, the total of invoices is a decimal. And then invoice average is also a decimal. All right, that was step 4. Step 5, enhance the code for the click event of the calculate button. So I know that this is the click event for the calculate button, but if you're unsure, if you have like a ton of code and can't find it easily, if you double click on the calculate button from your designer, it'll take you right to that click event for the calculate button. All right. Enhance the code so it calculates and displays the new data. So this is listed in 421, but they want you to try to do it without looking at that code. That's fine. So I'm going to add some comments here. Just so I know what's going on. So here we declare the variables. Here we fill in the read-only fields in our form, and then refocus the user's attention. All right. Declaring the variables, declare and set, because we're actually setting the values here. So between declaring and setting the variables and filling in the read-only forms, this is where I want to add my new stuff. This is where I'm going to add I guess we'll say increment the module level variables. I don't like the word increment, but I don't know. That's what it's going to be right now. So it's quite simple. When someone clicks on calculate, we're going to take number of invoices and add 1 to it. So number of invoices equals number of invoices plus 1. Which is fine. That works. I'm going to do number of invoices plus equals 1, which is adding 1 to number of invoices. A little shorthand there. Okay, total of invoices. Total of invoices equals total of invoices plus that's a good question. Let's see. Total of invoices. It's going to be the total that we came up with. So it's going to be plus invoice total. And invoice average equals total of invoices divided by number of invoices. All right. So we set those values, and now we have some new form fields that we need to fill out. we have text number of invoices dot text is equal to number of invoices, and remember that's a integer, so we're going to run it through toString in order to make it a string that we can put into the text property of that object, the text number of invoices object. We also have text total of invoices, and the text property of that is going to be set to, I'm going to use format currency, and I'm going to send to format currency total of invoices. And then text, what do we call this one? Invoices average, invoice average dot text equals, again, this is currency, format currency, invoice average. So we set those, and let's save this and run it. I know I'm not done. I want to show you where we're at right now. So if I enter subtotal like 500, oh, we ran into an error. Okay, let's see. Conversion from string to type decimal is not. Okay, so remember, my input is now this box, which is called text enter subtotal. But here, we're still reading text subtotal. So I want to read text enter subtotal. What's nice about that is when I had it selected, I saw this down here was also highlighted. So when I put the word enter here, I know I need to change this one as well. All right, save, F5 to run it. Again, we're not done. I'm going to put 600 in here. So I put in 600. It shows me the discount percent, amount, and the total. The total obviously goes into the total of invoices because we started at 0 really. We incremented the number of invoices to 1. 450 divided by 1 is 450. So what we need to do, one of the things we forgot, is this 600 needs to go into this field, formatted as currency, and then wipe this out and have the user's focus selected or shown there. So fill in the read-only fields. We'll do that here. Text subtotal dot text equals format currency of subtotal. And then I want to clear that. Actually, I'm going to clear it down here. Text enter subtotal dot text equals nothing. I'm going to clear that value. I think we can use clear. Let's try that. All right, let's run it now. I'm putting 600, hit enter. So that 600 moved down here. All this calculated. My focus is back up here. And what's nice is I can put another invoice value in, 400, enter, and it's done. So now that I entered 400, I have 2 invoices total. The total of those 2, 300 and 450 is 750. 750 divided by 2 is 375. So this is working just fine. Great. Calculate works, exit works. Clear does not do anything right now. I'm gonna guess that's what's coming up next. Okay, so we just did step 5 and use the techniques you learned in chapter 3. So now we're on to step 6 and an event handler for the click event of the clear totals button. So I go back to my designer, double click on the clear button. It gives me a click event for the clear button. And when we do this, we need to clear these module variables. We need to clear the values that are stored in there. And then we also want to clear what's in basically all these text fields. We want them all cleared out. So we're going to say number of invoices is 0. That semicolon that I briefly had there was a bad habit. Total of invoices is 0. And invoice average is 0. So that cleared the variables. And now we need to clear the text boxes. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 text boxes to clear out. So we need to clear out, and I'm just going to do a lot of copy and paste. The subtotal, the discount percent, discount amount, and you know what? I think that looks neater. I mean, you can set the clear property or the text property to an empty string, but I think this is more, to me, this looks like you're not done, right? That you might want to come back and I meant to put something in here, but I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to leave an empty string. But this is very implicit, like, or explicit. I forget which one. But it's telling you this is exactly what I want to do. I want to clear this value. Okay. So keep going here. So we got to do this to the text total, and then we got to do it to number of invoices, total of invoices, and invoice average. We're going to run .clear on all that. Oh, and then when I took a peek to 421, afterwards, because the user clicked on that clear button, we want their focus to come back to the enter subtotal box. So yeah, we can run that. I'm pretty confident in it working. I'm putting $500 and $200 and $89.56. I'm going to hit clear and then put in 600. Now I'm back to 1. So that's something you want to test with your code, is that if you hit clear and you put a new value in and you hit calculate and it's not one number of invoices, you forgot to clear the variables. You might have only cleared the text boxes. Clear needs to clear those module level variables as well. Okay, so that was through step 7. Give it a quick save. Now, step 8. Add 3 more labels, 3 more text boxes below the 2 columns of text boxes and labels. Do we have an example of what this is supposed to look like? No, we don't. All right. To the right side of the form, the labels are largest invoice, smallest invoice, midpoint, and okay, got it. I'm going to take my form, make it bigger again, and again, give yourself enough space to work. Oops, don't do that. All right. I'm going to take these boxes, copy, paste, line them up in here. I'm not happy with that. That's better. That's better. Okay. So in my world, I think smallest invoice should be on top. And what do we call this one? Midpoint is in the middle. Largest invoice is at the bottom here. These buttons, we can put them somewhere in there. How does that look? I'm not happy with that. Good enough. And let's give these things names. So this is a text box, so its prefix is txt. Smallest invoice, midpoint, txt midpoint. Largest invoice, txt largest invoice. All right, so let's think about what's going to happen here. Someone's going to put in a value like 200, and all this stuff's working already. But we're going to look at the value that comes out of this total, is that the new smallest invoice? If it is, put it in here. If it's the new largest, put it in here. And then midpoint's always going to be the largest and the smallest added together divided by 2. All right, so let's look at what we need to do here. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need a module level variable called smallest invoice, and that's going to be a decimal. And remember, these module level, they're available to all sub-procedures, and they maintain their state. I think that's probably the most important thing here, is that after button calculate.click runs, right, it does all this stuff, and it hits end sub, these variables maintain their values. So I have 3 new module level variables. I'll make this go away. All right. And instead of increment, I'm going to say modify the module level variables. So let's think about smallest invoice. It's going to be a condition. We're going to say if invoice total is less than smallest invoice, then smallest invoice is equal to invoice total. So if our new invoice total is less than the previous invoice total, smallest invoice total, the smallest invoice total is now equal to the invoice total. And largest is going to work very similar. So if invoice total is greater than largest invoice, then largest invoice is equal to invoice total. And then we're going to set midpoint is equal to smallest invoice plus largest invoice divided by 2. All right, and then we're going to fill in the read-only fields. So text smallest invoice dot text is equal to format currency smallest invoice. Just do some copy and paste there. Set the midpoint. That's txt midpoint. Txt largest invoice equal to largest invoice. So we set those values. All right, and I know that's not it, but I'm going to show you that it doesn't work. I'm going to put a value in 200. Oh, it did work. Oh, it worked so far. Let's see, the smallest invoice is 0. Well, that's not true. So the smallest invoice should be 150 because that is the only invoice right now. The smallest and the largest and the midpoint should all be the same. So what the book's telling you to do is when you declare the smallest invoice, you're going to make it a really large number. That's 7 nines there, so like close to 10 million. So now when I run it, you don't see the smallest invoice, but when I put in 200, what happened here is if 150 is less than 10 million, or sorry, 9,999,999, which is true, then set the smallest invoice value. So the book's hack of a solution is to set the original smallest invoice to a really big number. Not the ideal solution, but it works just fine. Clear didn't clear these values, so we got to take care of that. Nope, we don't want smallest invoice to be 0. We want it to be 9999999. Because again, when we clear the values, the next smallest invoice is going to be smaller than this. So, you know, if you're selling widgets and you never have orders that are $10 million, that's fine. If you're selling, I don't know, mansions or something that you do have $10 million orders, then you need to make this a much larger value. Or, I had to look it up in the book. You want to look at like pages 142, 143 and use nullable types. So for my class, this is a perfectly fine answer, but if you make these nullable, then what you would do is you'd say, you know, the smallest invoice, and I need to look at this again. You would say that the smallest invoice as a nullable of decimal, so it doesn't have a value. And then down here, you would say if the smallest invoice is null or the invoice total is less than the smallest invoice, then set it. Because really, setting the smallest invoice to 9,999,999 is not the best solution. Using null values is, because when you first start your application, right here, your smallest invoice is null. It does not have a value because there have been no invoices entered so far. But the application right now thinks the smallest invoice is like 10 million. So it's definitely a hack. I don't like it, which is why for my class you get extra credit if you use null values to get through like the smallest invoice, midpoint, and largest invoice. I just want to make sure that this clear works. Oh, it didn't work. Did I forget to clear my... I forgot to clear my text boxes too. All right, one more time. 200, and then, I don't know, 20,000. Clear. 500. Great. Everything's working. The clear is working. Clear those out. Cleared out the module variables and the values there. That works just fine. So again, my class, let's use null values for extra credit on this assignment. Another thing that I think is kind of ridiculous is let's do this where we don't store invoice average or midpoint. Reason being, invoice average is always the total of invoices over the number of invoices. And midpoint is always smallest plus largest divided by 2. So where we have invoice average here, I'm going to take this and copy it. I'm going to comment out this line because I don't want to use that there. And I'm going to take and put this here. So now the invoice average text box, the text property of it, is going to be the total of invoices divided by number of invoices. I'm taking that and pushing it through format currency. And then I'm going to take the previous midpoint calculation and put that here. So now our code, and I don't need this, and I don't need this. So now I've just taken 2 modular level variables out of our code. And essentially I can get rid of this line. I can get rid of this line. I can get rid of this line. Was there something else? Oh, right here. Get rid of that line. Clean this up a little bit more. Get rid of that line. Get rid of that line. Okay. Save it. Run it. 200, 400, 800. Clear. 560. It works great. And you know, there's nothing wrong with doing it the other way, but you're using up memory. I mean, dim is declare in memory. So instead of holding, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 variables, I'm only holding 4 values as module level variables. The other way, you were holding 6. And you know, it's just let's be efficient programmers. You know, the computers that we're working on today, they don't care if you're using 4 or 6. There's so much more overhead going on, but in general, you know, I just want to make sure that you're efficient programmers, and it's just generally bad practice, whether it's in your application or a database, to store calculated values. If you could take 2 other fields and calculate the value, you should not be storing that value unless you're talking about a calculation that takes a long time. You know, but these, to take 2 numbers, add them together and divide them by 2, this does not take a long time. It's more efficient to calculate this every time than it is to store it in a variable. So the previous way, storing, you know, having 6 module level variables is not wrong. This is better. So I would love to see my class doing it this way. I think if you're not in my class and you did it this way, your instructor would be impressed. And then I would highly recommend take these smallest and largest invoices and look at what I say, page 142 and 143, and make them nullable variables, and then adjust your code appropriately. So then you're not storing these fake numbers up there. All right, save it, zip it up, submit it.